Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we have 5 signs you're not an IJ. And so these are the INFJ, INTJ, ISTJ, and ISFJ types. The first sign is that you love to improvise and go with the flow.
So as an IJ, it's probably not your natural flow to want to go out and just leap. An IJ wants to, they want to consider what they're about to do before they do it. So they might want to compare, have I done something like this in the past? Do I trust these people I'm with? They might also want to just think about it as a concept and all the ways that it could go wrong. But an IJ is not going to be the first one out there jumping off the cliff.
Yeah, and so IJs won't be the most adventurous people you know of because SI and NI are very cautious functions and they plan ahead before they do things. And so they future forecast or they look at the consequences and the implications before they jump into something. Because for an NI dominant type, so an INFJ or INTJ, they're going to need a purpose or a meaning before they go down a path. They need it to align with the trajectory of something or to have some sort of underlying purpose for them to try something out. And so they're not going to be the first person to just go with the flow and be free-flowing and carefree or casual. And with ISTJs and ISFJs, with SI, they're going to compare things to the past and what has worked in the past. And so if they have nothing to compare the current thing to, they will not be able to go with the flow because they'll feel a little bit anxious about it because they don't know what to expect. There's a fear of the unknown with NE as the last function. And so IJs tend to be very intentional. And so they can't just fly by the seat of their pants. They're not the type to just wing it.
Yeah, and especially thinking about SI, if they don't have the personal experience with whatever they might want to try, they might not have to have the experience themselves before they'll go in, but they do at least want to have someone that they trust who has had the experience. So they'll use those references and other people's experience to supplement the known for them. And the second point is you have to hold yourself back from taking charge, especially with people you don't know well. If this is something you find yourself doing, you're probably not an IJ. IJs might very well want to take charge or probably do take charge at home and in settings that they know. But when it comes to settings that they're less familiar with or with the general public, this is not something that an IJ tends to do well.
Yeah, they tend to need permission to take charge unless it's in a comfortable space that they're already used to. Because our auxiliary function oftentimes needs a little push to get activated.
Oftentimes, as an IJ, you may have some ideas on making things more efficient or making things feel better for the group, but you'll usually hold back and wait for cues from others before you step in and take action and try and take control of the group. You notice it more than you have a compulsion to impact it directly.
Very well put, Diane. And so the third sign that you're not an IJ is that you find yourself in precarious situations that are risky and you have no idea how you got there. And so IJs tend to forecast or project into the future how things will go. And so they're not going to be left blindsided in most situations. They're going to have some idea of how things are going to turn out, whether it's NI seeing the vision of how things will turn out or SI that sees like past experiences and how, based on those, what will happen in the future. But they'll still have some element of guessing at what's going to happen because they're afraid of chaos. IJs don't like chaos. And so they're not going to put themselves in risky situations because they're very good at forecasting most situations that are overly risky without good return. IJs are just really good at moderating chaos. And so if you're someone who's in an extremely chaotic state all the time, it's very unlikely it's an IJ.
So as an IJ, you might very well take some risky action. It's not that an IJ would never take risky action, but it's not going to be in a situation where you didn't first think about the consequences or what the situation might look like when you get there. But an IJ could definitely, downhill ski, but it's not going to be something they do probably spur of the moment, and definitely not something that they do without looking at who's done it before and maybe checking ratings or figuring out a way to minimize the chaos, as you said, Joyce, prior to jumping in.
Yeah, there's going to be some chaos management with the IJ.
And the fourth point that you are not an IJ is that you're very good at living in the here and now. Depending on which of these functions you lead with, SI DOMs tend to be more focused on the past. What have they done in the past? What have they experienced in the past? What has been their experience? And an NI DOM tends to be very future focused. So what is my vision? Where am I headed? If I make this decision, if I take this action, where's that going to lead me? So being spontaneous, being in the here and now, being in the moment tends to not be something that an IJ is extremely good at.
Yeah. So an IJ is never going to be completely in the moment. They might be in the moment in the sense that if they're an ISFJ or an ISTJ, they might be living in the current realities, the day-to-days of the life. So that could be seen as in the moment, but there'll always be this past referencing that they'll do. So they're never fully in the here and now.
And also with an SI DOM, there tends to be a comparison, and they tend to be very good at comparing what was I then, or what was this then, and what is it now? Not always a self, but even of a situation. What was this 10 years ago, and what is it now? And what does that mean for me, and what I'm going to do in this moment?
So in a sense, IJs are never really truly in the moment because they're either comparing and contrasting with the past or forecasting into the future and how things will be. And so the last sign that you're not an IJ is that you have an extreme relationship with how people see you, swinging from unawareness to unbearable sensitivity to outer world feedback. Because IJs don't have an identity function as their dominant function, so a TI or FI function, they are pretty balanced with tribe feedback or group feedback or people feedback. And they're not going to go through these swings with FI and TI dominant types like ISFPs or INTPs. They go through periods of not knowing how other people are seeing what they're doing to an unbearable sensitivity to people's reactions to them. So there's this push and pull between I am unaware of how people view me versus I have this unbearable sensitivity to how the tribe is seeing me or how my identity is being taken by the group. So an IJ is not going to go through that struggle because their identity functions are in the middle of their stack. And so they have a more neutral relationship with identity.
Yeah, I agree. IJs tend to balance the tribe and the self quite well, whereas an IP, for an example, using FI or TI as their driver, they tend to be very sure of the self and what they think or what they feel, but there's a lot of unsureness about the group. And I think that creates that big separation of group versus self. And you don't see that same phenomenon with the balance that you see in those functions in an IJ.
Exactly. All right. And so that covers the 5 signs you are not an IJ. And so wonderful points, Diane. Beautifully said. And I'm thankful to have you here doing the 5 signs series with me because your NI is able to summarize the essence of the differences. And so I enjoy having you articulate them with me. And so thanks everyone for listening to this. I hope to help illuminate IJs for you. And I'll see you all in the next video.